People in Maple Harbor always said nothing good happens after midnight. But for Leora Hale, that was the moment her entire life shifted. She never expected a single phone call ringing out in the stillness of a quiet coastal town to change the way her heart beat. Yet that's exactly what happened on that cool autumn night. Leora had just closed her small cafe, the Harbor Lantern, a place known for warm lights and soft music drifting out onto the sleepy street. She was wiping down tables, humming to herself, when her phone buzzed inside her apron pocket. She almost let it ring. It was late and she was tired, but something urged her to look. The name glowing softly on the screen made her chest tighten. Rowan Mercer. Rowan, her childhood friend who had drifted in and out of her life like the tide. Rowan, who could steady her nerves with a single word. Rowan, who once lived next door until life pulled him toward a busier city miles away. They kept in touch, but not like before. Not like when they were teenagers whispering on porches long after the streetlights blinked on. She hesitated for a heartbeat, then answered. "Hey, you're awake," Rowan said. His voice was calm, warm, but something in it trembled, a tone she had never heard from him before. "Barely," she replied with a small laugh. "Is everything okay?" There was a pause on the line. Not long, just long enough for her pulse to pick up. "I'm in town," he finally said. She froze. "You're here? Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" "I didn't plan it," he admitted. "I just drove. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about things I should have said earlier in my life. Things I never told you." Leora's breath caught. This wasn't the easygoing Rowan she knew. This sounded like someone standing on the edge of something big. "You're scaring me a little," she said softly, leaning against the counter. "No," he whispered. "I don't want to scare you. I just needed to see you. I'm outside." Leora's heart seemed to drop right into her shoes. She turned toward the front windows of her cafe, and there he was, standing under the glow of the old street lamp, hands in his jacket pockets, head slightly bowed as if bracing himself. She pushed open the door, the little bell above it chiming through the calm night. Rowan lifted his head. His eyes held something she couldn't read, something deep, something unsteady. "You drove all this way?" she asked, stepping outside. Her breath formed a small cloud in the crisp air. He nodded. "I didn't know how else to say it." "Say what?" she whispered. Rowan swallowed. It looked like the hardest decision of his life. "That I made a mistake," he said quietly, "a long time ago, and I've been carrying it with me ever since." Leora's pulse quickened. "What mistake?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then looked away as though the words were heavier than he expected. "I should have told you something before I left this town," he murmured. "Something that might have changed everything." Leora felt the earth beneath her shift a little, as though the moment was balancing on a fragile line. "Rowan," she said gently, "what are you talking about?" He looked back at her, eyes full of something raw and unspoken. "I'll tell you," he said, "but can we walk? There's something I need to say, and I'm afraid if I stand still, I'll lose the courage." She nodded slowly, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. Whatever he had come to confess, whatever words he had carried across miles in the middle of the night, she knew they were about to change everything she thought she understood. As they began walking down the quiet street, Rowan's hand brushed hers, just lightly enough to send a warm ripple through her chest. She didn't pull away. Neither did he. And she knew this midnight wasn't like the others. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. But Rowan hadn't told her the real reason he showed up, not yet, and what he was about to say would leave her speechless. The night felt softer as they walked, the kind of quiet that made every sound feel close and personal. Leora kept glancing at Rowan, trying to understand the tension in his shoulders, the way his breath came slower than usual, as if he was fighting something within himself. They moved along Maple Harbor's main street, where most shops had gone dark for the night. The only lights came from old-fashioned lamps that cast warm circles on the pavement. It was a familiar path, but with Rowan beside her, it carried a different weight, like every step was leading toward a truth he had held back for far too long. "Rowan," she said gently, "you can tell me, whatever it is. I'm not going anywhere." He gave a small, shaky laugh. "I know, that's what makes this harder." She frowned. "Harder?" He stopped walking. So did she. Rowan turned toward her, the night breeze pushing a strand of hair across his forehead. He didn't push it away. He just looked at her, as if studying every detail he had forgotten to memorize over the years. "When I left this town," he began slowly, "I thought I was doing the right thing. I was offered a chance, and I told myself I needed to take it before life passed me by." "You did the best you could with what you knew," she said softly. He nodded, but his eyes stayed troubled. "Maybe, but I left too quickly. I didn't tell you the real reason it felt so hard for me to stay, or why leaving hurt more than I expected." Leora's hand tightened around the strap of her bag. "Rowan, what are you trying to say?" He exhaled long and slow, like he was preparing to step into something he couldn't take back. "I was in love with someone here," he whispered, "and I didn't tell her." Leora's breath hitched, though she kept her expression steady. "She was my best friend," he continued quietly. "The one person I trusted with everything, except that." Leora looked down at her shoes, heart thudding so loudly it felt like the whole street could hear it. "Why didn't you tell her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled, but it was the saddest smile she had ever seen. "Because I thought she deserved more than a guy who didn't even know where he was going," he said. "And I convinced myself she'd be better off if I just disappeared before those feelings complicated everything." Her chest tightened. "Rowan." "But disappearing didn't make anything easier," he said, voice low. "The distance didn't erase anything. And every time I came back to visit my parents, I told myself I'd say something. But then I'd see her smile and I'd get scared all over again." Leora tried to steady her breathing, though her throat felt tight. "Rowan, why are you telling me this now?" He stepped a little closer. Close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cool midnight air. "Because I finally realized something," he said quietly. "You never lose time by being honest. You only lose time by staying silent." Her eyes lifted to meet his, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Rowan took a slow breath. "Leora, the girl I was in love with?" Suddenly, a gust of wind swept down the street, scattering a few dry leaves between them. The silence that followed felt heavy, almost trembling. Leora swallowed. "Rowan, finish your sentence." He opened his mouth, but at that exact moment, a familiar voice called from across the street. "Leora, is that you?" Leora turned sharply. A man stepped out from the doorway of the small bookstore across the road, locking up for the night. It was Kaylin Ward, the new bookstore owner who had moved into town a few months ago. Friendly, thoughtful, always stopping by her cafe for tea and leaving generous tips that made her blush. Kaylin waved warmly. "Didn't expect to see you out this late." Rowan's jaw tightened, the words he had been about to say dissolving into the cold night. Leora blinked, torn between answering Kaylin and turning back to Rowan before the moment slipped away completely. But as she hesitated, she sensed Rowan step back, just slightly, Not a retreat, but something close to fear, something close to heartbreak. And the midnight confession hanging in the air remained unfinished. Kaylin's voice carried gently across the quiet street, but the timing cut straight through the fragile moment Rowan had been building toward. Leora felt her pulse jump, unsure where to look first, at Kaylin waving with easy warmth, or at Rowan, whose expression had shifted in a way that made her chest ache. She forced a small, polite smile toward the bookstore owner. "Hey, Kaylin," she called back softly. "Just getting some air." Kaylin nodded, slipping his keys into his jacket pocket. "Long night at the cafe?" "Yeah," she answered, though her voice sounded distant to her own ears. Rowan didn't say a word. He simply watched, shoulders drawn tight, gaze lowered just enough that she knew he was trying to hide whatever emotion had cracked through him. Kaylin stepped closer to the street, but didn't cross. "Well, get home safe, both of you. The temperature's dropping faster tonight." "Thanks," Leora said quickly. "Night," Kaylin added with a warm smile before turning and heading down the sidewalk. They waited until his footsteps faded, until the echo of the interruption settled. Only then did Leora look back at Rowan. He was staring at the pavement, his hands balled in his pockets, breathing slow, too slow, like he was trying to keep himself steady. "Rowan," she whispered. He lifted his head. The soft lamplight caught the uncertainty in his eyes. "Sorry," he murmured. "I lost the moment." Her heart squeezed. "No, it's okay. You can finish what you were going to say." He shook his head gently. "I shouldn't compete with anyone. That's not why I came." Leora blinked. "Compete? Rowan, Kaylin and I know," he cut in softly, "but still, the second he said your name, it hit me how long I've stayed quiet, how much I've let pass me by." She took a step closer. "He just works nearby, that's all. You didn't lose anything." He let out a breath, this one more fragile than the last. "Leora, I was finally ready to say something honest. And I didn't want it to sound like I was reacting to someone else." She felt the weight in his words. Not jealousy, fear. Fear of saying something too late. "Rowan, listen," she said softly. "Finish what you were about to tell me, please." He looked into her eyes, and for a moment she thought he would. But instead, he lifted a hand and rubbed the back of his neck, the old nervous gesture she remembered from school days when he wasn't sure what to do next. "I need a minute," he admitted. "I didn't expect anyone to see us. I didn't expect to feel thrown off this easily." Leora's chest tightened again, but this time with empathy. Rowan wasn't pulling away. He was fighting something inside himself. She nodded slowly. "Okay, then let's walk a little more. No pressure, no rush." He exhaled and managed a faint smile. "Yeah, walk with me." They continued down the street, the quiet hum of the town settling around them. The old harbor winds brushed against their faces, carrying the faint scent of the ocean. Leora kept her pace slow, waiting, hoping he'd find the courage again. He spoke first. "You know what's strange?" Rowan said. "Driving here tonight, I practiced what I'd say, every version of it. But the second I saw you standing in the doorway of your cafe, every sentence disappeared." "Maybe the truth doesn't need rehearsing," she murmured. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe it scares me, because once I say it, everything changes." "Change isn't always bad." He looked at her again, eyes softening. "No, it's not." They reached a narrow overlook near the water, the one they had visited countless times when they were younger. The waves shimmered under the moonlight, slow and steady. Rowan leaned against the railing, drawing a careful breath. "Leora," he said, voice shaking just slightly, "the girl I was in love with, the one I never told." Her heart stopped. This was it. Finally. He turned toward her fully, his lips parted. But before he could speak, headlights swept across the overlook, a car pulling into the small parking area nearby. The sudden glare broke the moment once again. Rowan closed his eyes, shoulders deflating. Leora turned to see who it was. A familiar vehicle slowed to a stop. Her throat tightened. It was her older sister's car, and she never came out this way at midnight. Rowan opened his eyes. "Is everything okay?" he asked softly. Leora stared at the car door cracking open. She wasn't sure. The car door clicked open, and Leora's breath caught in her throat. Her sister, Marin, stepped out with a look on her face that Leora recognized instantly. Concern mixed with urgency, the kind she usually reserved for family emergencies. Leora felt Rowan's shift beside her, his warmth steady but tense, as if he wasn't sure whether to step back or stay close. "Marin," Leora called gently, "what are you doing out here so late?" Marin wrapped her sweater tighter around herself and walked toward them, the gravel crunching softly beneath her shoes. Her eyes flicked to Rowan, offering a polite nod, but quickly returned to Leora. "I've been looking for you," she said softly. "Your phone's been going straight to voicemail." Leora touched her pocket and realized the battery must have died. A small pang of worry tugged at her. "What's wrong?" she asked. Marin hesitated, and that hesitation filled the night with a new kind of tension, quiet, heavy, and deeply human. "It's Mom," she finally said. "She's okay now, but she wasn't feeling well earlier. I didn't want to scare you, but I thought you should come home." Leora's breath caught. "Is she all right?" "She is," Marin reassured quickly. "Just dizzy and tired. The doctor said it's nothing dangerous. But she was asking for you." The relief washed through Leora, but it didn't ease the knot in her stomach. She hated the thought of her mother worried or unwell, even in mild ways. Rowan stepped a little closer. "Do you need a ride?" he asked softly. Marin glanced between them, the pieces slowly fitting together in her head. "I didn't mean to interrupt anything." "You didn't," Rowan said quickly. But Leora felt those words settle strangely inside her, because part of her knew he had been interrupted, not intentionally, but in a way that nudged the night in a different direction. Leora reached out and touched Marin's arm. "Let's go. I'll come home with you." "Of course," Marin said gently. Leora turned back to Rowan, trying to steady her breathing. He offered a small, understanding smile. "Family comes first. Go, I'm just glad she's okay." She nodded, but her heart tugged painfully at the unfinished confession hanging between them like an unanswered question. "Rowan, will you be here tomorrow?" she asked. He hesitated. It was barely half a second, but she felt the weight of it. "I wasn't planning on leaving," he said, "but I'll stay in town if you want me to." She blinked, touched by the simplicity of the offer. "I do," she said quietly. Rowan's eyes softened. "Then I'll be here." Marin, sensing the quiet intensity between them, took a step back toward her car to give them a moment. Leora tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked up at Rowan. "I'm sorry tonight got cut short." "It didn't," he said gently. "I came to say something important, and I still will. When you're ready, when everything's calm." "But you were about to say it," she whispered, "before the interruptions." Rowan let out a soft, shaky laugh. "Yeah, tonight wasn't the smoothest attempt, was it?" She smiled faintly. "Not even close." His expression became tender. "Leora, some truths deserve to be said when you're not looking over your shoulder, when life isn't pulling you in 6 different directions. I want to tell you. I just want the moment to be yours, not shared with interruptions, headlights, or worry." Leora felt warmth rise in her chest. He wasn't avoiding. He was waiting with intention. "I'll call you tomorrow," she said. "I'll be waiting," he replied. She took a step back, then paused. Her voice lowered. "Rowan, Thank you for coming tonight. He gave her a soft smile that held years of unspoken emotion. I couldn't stay away. Marin started the engine, and Leora opened the passenger door. But before she climbed in, she looked back one more time. Rowan stood under the street lamp, hands in his pockets, watching her with a look she had never seen before, gentle, hopeful, and full of something he had been holding in his heart for far too long. She swallowed hard. Tonight wasn't the end. It was the beginning. But as Marin drove her toward home, Leora couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow's conversation would change everything. And she wasn't sure if she was ready or if she was more ready than she'd ever been. Morning crept into Maple Harbor with a faint golden light, brushing softly against Leora's curtains. She hadn't slept much. Her mind kept replaying Rowan's unfinished words, the look in his eyes, and the gentle promise that he'd be there when she was ready. After checking on her mother, who truly was feeling better and insisted she stop worrying, Leora stepped out into the cool morning air. The sky was painted with soft blues, and the scent of the harbor drifted gently through town. She closed her cafe for the day, needing space for what she knew was coming. Her heart had been tumbling through emotions since midnight, and she needed more than a few stolen moments before speaking to Rowan again. She didn't have to wonder long. Her phone buzzed around late morning. Rowan, I'm at the Overlook, the one we went to last night. No pressure, come if you want. Leora stared at the message for a long moment, her pulse warming in her chest. Then she grabbed her coat and walked. The path to the Overlook felt different in daylight, less mysterious, more fragile, like daylight made every emotion clearer. She saw Rowan leaning on the railing, his gaze on the water. The breeze ruffled his hair slightly. He looked calm, but she could sense the nervous energy beneath it. He turned as she stepped closer. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," she echoed. They stood a moment in silence, letting the waves fill the space between them. No midnight distractions, no headlights, no voices calling her name. Just the truth waiting to be spoken. Rowan drew a careful breath, the kind someone takes before stepping somewhere they can't step back from. "Leora, I'm sorry about last night," he began. "I didn't mean to drop everything on you at once." "You didn't," she said gently. "I just want to understand. I want to hear the rest." He nodded, his eyes softening. "Then I'll say it. Everything I've been carrying." He turned toward her fully. No hesitation this time. "When I left Maple Harbor years ago, I thought I was being responsible. I thought chasing opportunity was the only way to grow. But the truth is, the hardest part of leaving wasn't the unknown. It was leaving you." Her breath hitched. Rowan continued, voice low but steady. "I kept telling myself it was just friendship, that I'd get over the way you made everything feel lighter, that the moments we shared were just childhood memories." His jaw tightened just slightly. "But the longer I stayed away, the more I realized something I'd been running from." He looked straight into her eyes. "I was in love with you, Leora. I've been in love with you for years." The world seemed to pause. The breeze stilled. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. Rowan stepped a little closer, not enough to overwhelm, just enough to show he wasn't afraid anymore. "I didn't tell you because I was scared you didn't feel the same, scared I'd ruined the best friendship I ever had, scared that if I stayed, I'd hold you back." He exhaled softly. "But I think the truth is, I held myself back." Leora swallowed hard, emotion rising fast and warm. "Rowan," she whispered, "why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I wasn't brave then," he admitted. "But I'm trying to be now." Silence settled around them again, but this time it didn't feel heavy. It felt like a space where something new could begin. Leora took a gentle breath and stepped closer. "You didn't ruin anything," she said softly. "You were honest, and I'm glad you came back to say it." His eyes searched hers, waiting for something he didn't dare assume. She continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know exactly what the future looks like. I don't know where this conversation leads." Her hand lifted, fingers brushing his lightly. "But I do know, I never stopped wondering what life would look like if you and I actually talked about what we felt." Rowan's eyes softened with emotion so warm it made her chest tighten. "I'm not asking for everything at once," he whispered. "Just a chance. One honest chance." Leora smiled, small, real, full of something awakening. "You have it," she said. A long breath escaped him, relief mingling with something tender and hopeful. The weight he'd carried for years seemed to ease all at once. They stood together at the overlook, the morning sun rising slowly behind them, painting the water with soft gold. Nothing dramatic, nothing rushed, just two hearts finally speaking the truth they had held far too long. Rowan looked at her with quiet awe. "So, what happens now?" Leora smiled, feeling steadier than she had in years. "Now," she said, "we take it one step at a time." And for the first time since midnight, everything felt exactly right.